I had no time at all to prepare a proper intro for this video. So always keep in mind that all my findings and settings are based on the PlayStation 5 version and the LG CX 65-inch. It can be, of course, that the Xbox version is behaving in a similar way, but I can't prove it. But as always, feel free to try my settings because you can't harm anything. Okay, so let's go straight to the facts. HDR calibration menu on the PlayStation 5. Does it work with Far Cry 6? No, it doesn't. But this is not a big deal because with the internal settings or actually sliders from Far Cry 6, we can adjust the HDR picture just perfectly. So what I found, unfortunately, is that as soon you play the game in HDR, you have black level rays, at least on the PlayStation 5 and on my LG CX, which means the standard settings actually is 50, but I had to decrease this to 49 to get perfect OLED black back. It's not a deal breaker, but on the other hand, of course, it's not very nice. Okay, so let's talk about the standard settings in Far Cry 6 and why you shouldn't use them at all. I mean, look at the values. I don't even understand why the standard settings having a HDR peak brightness from just 600. It doesn't make sense, you know what I mean? And I would understand when we have a standard settings around 1000. This makes more sense, but 600 is just too less, absolutely too less, because you almost have literally no HDR effects. Not in HGiG, not in dynamic tone mapping. There's almost no HDR effects. Anyway, so even when I set these values to the numbers, I think they're right, because we know actually that the LG CX is capable of around 700 candela, you know what I mean? But we know in some cases we have to set it to 800 or maybe 900 to get the best HDR effects. So even I set this to 1000, there was almost nothing happen on the screen. And yeah, let me show you something. So we keep it in the standard settings at the moment. And we just have a look on this very ugly sun at the moment. I hope my camera can catch this. So there is a little bit of a difference in terms of HGiG on and off. Okay, so you can hopefully see this. In dynamic tone mapping, we know what's happening. Dynamic tone mapping will just brighten up the picture, which compared to HGiG looks much better at this very moment. So I show you something. I like to show you something here. So this is actually a very good example on how HGiG or HDR at all can work. So right now you can see no difference at all. There's literally no difference between HGiG on and off. Dynamic tone mapping, of course, will brighten up the picture, and it looks like we have something like HDR, but there is nothing, okay? Believe me, there's literally no HDR effect. Let me just jump into the option menu again. And let me change this to the settings I found is the best for my LG CX. And if you're now wondering what I'm doing here, yes, I was a little bit confused in the beginning as well, but 2200 and 350 for HDR paper white. So HDR peak brightness 2200 and HDR paper white 350 for HGiG. And if you don't believe me, then have a look here now. So this is now with HGiG. And this is just really, really nice. And there's nothing washed out, nothing overblown, nothing at all. So you can't use these settings with dynamic tone mapping because then you will lose a lot of details. But I will show you dynamic tone mapping, of course, in a second. So have a look on the background here. Hopefully you can see this, and a little bit on the clouds here. When I'm changing now this, there is even in the background here, from the sky here, the brightness changing, which means we have even very nice subtle HDR effects in the sky here. And now, of course, when we look at the sun, which now in my opinion looks really, really great, just compare this. I hope my camera can catch this. Just really, really nice. A very bright sun. Okay, let me explain it like this. With different settings, when let's say I'm changing the HDR peak brightness to 1200 and the paper white just to 200 candela, I'm getting a much brighter sun, but it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. So at this very moment, the sun was just around 450 candela, I think was the measurement. But to be very honest, I don't care about maximum peak brightness if it doesn't look good. This at the moment looks just very, very nice, as I would expect it in real as well. I hope you get my point. And again, you can't use the settings at the moment with dynamic tone mapping on, because it will just overblown all details. But yeah, I will show you the dynamic tone mapping in a second. So here as well, we have very nice subtle HDR effects. I hope you can see this, the difference. Of course, dynamic tone mapping is doing a different story. And this is what I like to have with HGiG. So no brightness change. As you can see, even here, can you see here the stones? I hope my camera can catch this. But can you see the difference? Maybe we can have a look on this one here. Can you see this? So this is really just happening when you change the HDR peak brightness to 2200 on my LG ZX. With 1800 it starts to show a little bit of HDR details on objects like this. But to be honest, I found 2200 is the value I would like to use. If you increase this a little bit more, then you start already blowing out details. So I think 2200 is already on the edge before you start really losing details. But here I have to say, this is just, we can even get closer. Can you see this? This is just so nice. I mean, very subtle, but it is not always about the maximum peak brightness. It is about quality from HDR, and that is what you get with this setting. So HGiG with those settings, I'm absolutely happy. Okay, so let's jump to dynamic tone mapping on, and those are the values I would like to use, or you should use if you like to use dynamic tone mapping on a LG ZX. HDR peak brightness is 1800 and HDR paper white 250. So with the HDR paper white, you can actually increase this a little bit if you want to, because dynamic tone mapping will then adjust the brightness as well. But I wouldn't increase this, because you start already with 1800. This is absolutely maximum I would go, because you start already losing fine details over HGiG, to be very honest, especially when we're looking at stuff like that. And I compared this, of course, with the right settings from HGiG and then dynamic tone mapping on. You lose already a little bit of details, you know, but 1800 is actually a very nice setting in my opinion. But there is, as always, a very big advantage why I would not recommend to use dynamic tone mapping on, because in this game actually HGiG is doing a good job. With the right settings, you have a nice bright picture and very great HDR effects. So, and the big disadvantage in dynamic tone mapping is the time what it takes to adjust the picture. Don't do this, okay? I'm very sorry for this. So what it takes to adjust the picture. So it can take up to 5-6 seconds till the picture has the right brightness, and dynamic tone mapping is finished with adjusting. And this is very easy to show as always. So we have here our sun. So we just wait a little bit, because again, 5 to 6 seconds. And hopefully now, let me get my cursor. You can see here the bright sun, and we have here the sun beams, or whatever you call this. Very nice actually to see at the moment. But usually you run around like this. You shoot or whatever, you have full action. And then maybe at some point you like to look at something. And then you see nothing, almost nothing. And it takes a couple of seconds, and now the nice sun is back. And this is a very bad behavior in my opinion from dynamic tone mapping, but this is a behavior which is just normal, unfortunately. And if you like it, you're good to go. But in my opinion, HGiG with the right setting is just doing such a great job in this. Hello, this is my friend, by the way. I really like him. Oh! Where did I got this now? I haven't seen this before actually. Anyway, really nice game and great game so far, but just with the right settings. Standard settings in terms of HDR are absolutely useless. Okay, so that's it for this video, and I hope you're happy with the length from this video, because I really had a little bit trouble with my time today. As you know, I was a little bit sick the last 2 days, very sick actually, with a very bad stomach flu. Too many details, believe me, too many details. Anyway, summary is standard settings in this game absolutely useless. Really absolutely useless. Even you use this in dynamic tone mapping on, which gives you of course a much brighter picture than HGiG in the standard settings, but still you lose so many nice details in terms of HDR with the standard settings. So let's talk about this again, and I would actually recommend to, when you use dynamic tone mapping, change the HDR peak brightness to 1800 and the HDR paper white to 250. You can increase this of course a little bit, but then you lose more maximum peak brightness. It's always a little bit of a, you know, adjustment, okay, what you have to do. If you like to use HGiG, which I would recommend, then change this to 350 HDR paper white and the HDR peak brightness to 2200, which gives me on my HGiG a really great experience. And I just like to show you this again. This is just nice, and not just this, you know, we have so nice details here, even on the stones, and so nice subtle, very minor, fine HDR details here, even on this what is this here? What is the called? Leitplanke. It's in German. Light. I have no idea. But even here I can see HDR effects on this Leitplanke. Okay. So I don't know actually really the English name. Really put it in the comments, because then I have a new word what I can learn actually. But here on this Leitplanke, you can see very nice HDR effects. And again, with the standard settings, there's literally nothing at all. So just put in the comments what you think about those settings. And yeah, of course I tried the game a little bit further as well, and but I don't want to spoil it too much. I tried it in the very beginning with those settings. I'm very happy with my HGiG settings at the moment. I would strongly recommend to play with HGiG, but as always I understand when you guys like to have a little bit more of a higher default brightness, let's say like this. That's when you have to use dynamic tone mapping on, and I really hope that with the newer generations of TVs, we're getting a higher peak brightness at all, because then we have also a higher default brightness in HGiG, which of course would be much better. But at the moment, that's what we have to live with, and it's actually not too bad, to be very honest. I really like it. And yeah, of course, I shouldn't do this. Anyway, that's enough for this video. Put in the comment section what you think about this. I promise that my next video will have a little bit more details and maybe a proper, better explanation about HDR. But this time it is what it is, okay? I hope you like it. Leave me a comment, leave me a like, and if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.